We saw a reflection in a puddle that smiled before we did. At first, none of us said anything. It was the kind of thing that slips past your mind if you let it, something small and out of order, easy to file away as a trick of lighter movement. The forest had been doing that to us all afternoon. Shadows that seemed to lag behind branches. Sounds that arrived a second too late. The sense that everything around us was just slightly misaligned. We had been walking for hours by then. Old growth forest. The kind that swallows the sky whole. The canopy above us was dense enough to turn daylight into a dim, green-gray haze. The trunks were massive, wider than any of us could wrap our arms around, and spaced irregularly, like they'd grown without any regard for pattern or symmetry. Moss covered everything, not just the ground, but the bark, the fallen logs, even the stones that jutted out of the earth at odd angles. The air was thick, damp, it clung to your skin. And it was quiet, not the usual forest quiet, with insects and distant birds and the occasional rustle of something moving out of sight. This was different. The silence felt deliberate, like something had pressed down on the sound itself and held it there. We had stopped near a shallow depression where rainwater had collected into a wide, still puddle. It sat in a patch of bare earth, surrounded by roots that curled up from the ground like fingers. The surface of the water was smooth, too smooth, considering the uneven ground around it. I remember stepping around it, careful not to disturb the edge. "Watch your footing," Mark said behind me. "Looks deeper than it is." I glanced down. The water reflected as clearly, more clearly than it should have, given the dim light filtering through the canopy. It showed all three of us, me, Mark, and Elena, standing in a loose triangle around the puddle. And in that reflection, we were already smiling, not wide, not exaggerated, just a slight upward curve at the corners of our mouths. I hadn't moved my face. I was certain of that. But the version of me in the water had. For a second, my mind tried to correct it. Tried to align what I felt in my own face with what I was seeing. Then my reflection's smile widened. A fraction. I felt nothing. No change in my own expression. Just the cold, slow realization that what I was looking at wasn't following me. It was ahead. "Do you see that?" Elena asked. Her voice sounded too loud in the stillness. I looked up. She was staring at the puddle, her face pale. "What?" Mark said. "Look," she said. He stepped closer, peering down. The three of us stood there, looking at our reflections. They looked back, smiling. Then, one by one, our reflections stopped. Their expressions fell flat. At the exact same moment, I felt the muscles in my own face relax. As if something had released them. I stepped back. The surface of the puddle rippled slightly, though nothing had touched it. "That's not right," Mark said. "No," I replied. I kept my voice steady, but something in my chest had started to tighten. "It's just the light," he added quickly. "Angle. Distortion." The puddle moved again. Not from the edges. From the center. A slow, inward shift, like the surface had flexed. Our reflections changed. Not dramatically. Just subtly. Their posture adjusted. Their heads tilted. In ways that didn't match us. "Okay," Elena said. "No." She turned away from the puddle, taking a few quick steps back. "I don't like that." I didn't blame her. There was something wrong with the way the reflections held themselves. Not just the mismatch in movement, but the intent behind it. They weren't passive. They weren't simply showing. They were reacting. Mark crouched down slightly, leaning closer. "Hey," I said. "Don't. It's water," he said. "It's just water." He reached out, picking up a small stick from the ground. "Watch," he added. He extended it toward the surface. In the reflection, his arm moved first. The stick broke the surface a fraction of a second later. The ripple spread outward, distorting the images of all three of us. But even as the water shifted, the reflections held their shape longer than they should have. Too long, as if they were resisting the distortion. Mark pulled the stick back. The ripple settled. Our reflections reformed. And this time, they weren't looking at us. They were looking at each other. I felt my stomach drop. "Did you?" I started. "Yes," Elena said. Her voice was tight. The reflections in the puddle stood closer than we were. Their positions had shifted, closing the space between them. They leaned slightly inward, as if sharing something. As if communicating. "We should go," she said. Mark hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, let's just keep moving." We turned away from the puddle. The silence pressed in again, thicker now. As we walked, I tried not to think about it. About the way the reflections had moved first. About the way they had changed when we weren't looking. But the forest didn't let things fade. It held onto them. We walked in a straight line. At least, we tried to. The terrain made it difficult. Roots, uneven ground, fallen branches. But we kept a consistent direction, using the position of the light filtering through the canopy as a rough guide. After a while, Elena spoke again. Do you hear that? I listened. Nothing. Then, a faint sound. Footsteps. Behind us. But delayed. Not echoing. Just. Late. We stopped. The sound stopped a moment after. I turned. The path behind us was empty. No movement. No disturbance. Just the same moss-covered ground and towering trees. It's probably just the ground settling, Mark said. But he didn't sound convinced. We started walking again. The footsteps followed. Always a fraction behind. Never quite matching. We didn't speak after that. The deeper we went, the more the forest seemed to close in. The trees shifted. Not visibly. Not in any way you could point to and say that one moved. But the spacing between them felt inconsistent. Paths that should have opened narrowed. Clearings seemed to reposition themselves. At one point, we passed a fallen log we all recognized. 10 minutes later, we passed it again. None of us commented on it. The air grew colder. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. And the silence. It deepened. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Your own breathing. The sounds of your body. And beneath that, something else. A faint, almost imperceptible shift. Like something moving just out of sight. We found another puddle. This one smaller. Narrower. Tucked between two exposed roots. We stopped without meaning to. No one said anything. We all looked down. The surface was still. Dark. Reflective. I saw myself. Mark. Elena. And a fourth figure. Standing just behind us. My breath caught. I turned. Nothing. The space behind us was empty. I looked back at the puddle. The fourth reflection was gone. Just the three of us again. Did you? Mark started. Yes, I said. Elena didn't speak. She stepped away first this time. Faster. Don't look, she said. Just go. We moved. Quicker now. The forest didn't resist us. But it didn't feel like it was letting us go, either. It felt like we were being guided. Subtly. The terrain smoothed out. The trees spaced themselves just enough to allow a clearer path. And always, the sense of being watched. Not from above. Not from the sides. From below. Every reflective surface we passed, puddles, wet leaves, even the sheen of moisture on bark, caught my attention. And in each one, something was slightly off. A delay. A shift. A glance that didn't match. At some point, Mark stopped. I need to check something, he said. He pulled out his phone. No signal. But that wasn't what he was checking. He turned the screen toward his face. Used it as a mirror. For a second, everything looked normal. Then, his reflection blinked. Twice. Out of sync. Mark inhaled sharply and lowered the phone. Okay. He said. Okay. His voice was flat. We didn't ask what he saw. We didn't need to. The forest was learning. That was the thought that settled in my mind, quiet and certain. It wasn't copying. Not exactly. It was observing. Testing. Adjusting. We kept moving. The light above shifted, dimming further as the canopy thickened. The ground grew wetter. The air heavier. And then, we saw it again. The first puddle. The wide one. The one with the roots curling around it. We hadn't turned back. We were sure of that. But there it was. Waiting. The surface was perfectly still. Reflective. We stopped at the edge. None of us wanted to look. But we did. We had to. The reflections were already there. Waiting. They stood closer together than we were. Their posture aligned. Their movements. Perfect. No delay. No mismatch. They looked like us. Exactly. Then, they smiled. All at once. Before we did, I felt my own face respond. The muscles moving without my permission. Lifting. Matching the expression. No, I said. The word came out wrong. Stretched. Like it had been shaped somewhere else first. In the puddle, the reflection stepped forward. Out of alignment with us. Toward the edge. Toward the surface. I stumbled back. Mark grabbed my arm. We need to go, he said. But his grip was loose. Distracted. He was looking at the water. Elena took a step closer. Elena, I said. She didn't respond. In the reflection, her double leaned forward. Reaching. The surface of the puddle rippled. From below, something pressed upward. The reflection of Elena's hand touched the surface first. Then hers followed. The water didn't break. It accepted it. Her fingers sank in, disappearing into the reflection. Elena, Mark said, sharper now. She didn't react. She stepped forward. Another inch. In the puddle, her reflection turned. Looked at us. Smiled wider. I moved. Grabbed her shoulder. Pulled her back. Her hand slipped free of the water with a soft, wet sound. She gasped, blinking. What? She started. The puddle went still. The reflections reset, matching us again. Perfect. We didn't wait. We turned and ran. The forest didn't stop us. But it followed. The footsteps behind us came faster now. Closer. Matching our pace. The trees shifted, closing gaps, forcing us into narrower paths. And everywhere, reflections. Small, subtle, watching. We didn't stop until the ground changed. The moss gave way to dirt. The canopy thinned. Light filtered through more clearly. The edge of the forest. We stumbled out into open air, breathless. The silence broke. Distant sounds returned. Wind, faint insects, something that felt like the world again. We didn't speak for a long time. When we finally did, it was minimal. Fragments. Enough to confirm we'd all seen the same things. Enough to not have to say more. We left. Drove back in silence. The forest disappeared behind us. But something didn't. I noticed it later. That night. In the bathroom mirror. I stood there, staring at my reflection. It stared back. Perfect. Still. Then, it smiled. A fraction of a second early. I felt my own face follow. The realization settled slowly. Heavy. The forest hadn't just watched us. It had learned us. And whatever had been in those reflections. It wasn't copying anymore. It didn't need to. Because now, it already knew what I was going to do next. The forest grew silent, and then the trees began to tremble. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just the absence of something I hadn't been paying attention to, the background noise you stop hearing after a few minutes outdoors. Insects, distant birds, the occasional rustle of leaves. It all faded so gradually that I only noticed it because of how complete the silence became. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that presses inward. We stopped without meaning to. Do you hear that? Daniel asked. His voice sounded wrong. Flat. As if it had been absorbed before it could travel. I listened. Nothing answered. No wind. No movement. Not even the soft creak of branches shifting under their own weight. Just a dense, unnatural stillness. I think it's just. I started, then stopped. There wasn't anything to compare it to. No baseline. The forest had removed it. Mara stepped closer to me, her boots making a dull, muted sound against the forest floor. Even that seemed wrong, like it didn't carry as far as it should have. It's too quiet, she said. The words seemed to disappear halfway between us. Daniel turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees. We were deep enough in the old growth that the canopy overhead blocked most of the sky. What light remained filtered through layers of leaves and moss, turning everything into a dim, green-gray haze. The trunks around us were massive, thick with age, their bark ridged and uneven. Some were so wide they distorted perspective, making the spaces between them feel inconsistent. Animals would still be making noise, he said. Even at this time, unless something scared them off, Mara replied. The thought settled uneasily. I opened my mouth to say something else. And that's when the trees began to tremble. Not sway, not bend, tremble. It started with a tall, narrow trunk about 20 feet ahead of us. At first, I thought I'd imagined it, a slight vibration in the bark, subtle enough to be mistaken for a trick of the light. Then it happened again, a fine, controlled movement. A rapid, almost imperceptible shudder that ran up the length of the trunk. I frowned. Did you see? Another tree joined it, then another. Not all at once. One by one, each trunk trembling in isolation, out of sync with the others. No wind touched the leaves above. The branches remained still. Only the trunks moved. What the hell is that? Daniel said. No one answered. The trembling spread. More trees began to vibrate, the motion traveling through the forest in uneven pulses. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't random. It was patterned, as if something beneath the ground were testing them. Touching them, one at a time. The forest floor felt different. I hadn't noticed it before, but now there was a faint sensation underfoot, a low, rhythmic pressure that rose and fell, barely perceptible but undeniably present. Do you feel that? I asked. Mara nodded. Yeah. Daniel crouched, pressing his hand against the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his expression changed. It's moving, he said. How? Mara asked. He didn't answer right away. He kept his hand there, eyes narrowing, as if trying to interpret something he didn't have the words for. Not like an earthquake, he said finally. It's slower, more controlled. The trembling trees intensified. The motion became more pronounced, no longer subtle enough to ignore. Bark shivered against itself, producing a faint, dry rasping sound that barely carried through the silence. Then, it stopped. All at once. The forest went still again. The sudden absence of movement felt heavier than the movement itself. We stood there, waiting. Okay, Daniel said, straightening. We should probably. The ground pulsed. A single, deep movement, like something shifting far below us. And the trees responded. This time, they didn't tremble individually. They moved together. A synchronized shudder that ran through the forest in a wide, expanding wave. The sound came with it. Low, subtle, like something exhaling through wood. Mara took a step back. That's not wind, she said. No, I replied. It wasn't. There was no air movement. No change in temperature. Just that coordinated motion, as if the trees were reacting to something we couldn't see. Or to us. The thought came quietly, but it settled into place with uncomfortable certainty. We should go, I said. Yeah, Daniel agreed. We picked a direction, any direction, and started walking. The silence followed us. Our footsteps felt wrong, muted and delayed. Each step seemed to land twice, the second one trailing just behind the first, as if the ground were remembering the impact. I tried not to focus on it. Ahead, the forest stretched on in uneven lines. The spacing between trees shifted subtly as we moved, some trunks appearing closer than they had been a moment before, others further away. At first, I thought it was just perspective. Then I realized we were passing the same tree. Twice. A large, gnarled trunk with a split near its base. I remembered it clearly because of the way the bark had peeled back, exposing a pale inner layer. We passed it once, walked for several minutes, then saw it again, in the same position. Did we turn? Mara asked. No, Daniel said. We've been going straight. We all knew that wasn't true anymore. The forest didn't allow straight lines. It bent them, subtly, just enough that you didn't notice until it was too late. The ground pulsed again, stronger this time. The trees shuddered in response. Not all of them, just the ones closest to us. I stopped. So it's reacting, I said. To what? Mara asked. I didn't answer. The trembling began again, focused now. A cluster of trees ahead of us vibrating in rapid, controlled bursts. The pattern was different this time. Short, sharp, repeated, like a signal. Daniel frowned. That's not random, he said. No, I replied. The trees behind us began to move. We turned. The trunks there trembled in a slower rhythm, longer intervals between each shudder. Two patterns, ahead and behind. I felt a cold realization settle in my chest. It's communicating, Mara said. Or testing, Daniel added. The ground shifted again. A deeper movement, closer now. Something beneath us adjusting its position. The roots. That was the first thought that came to mind. Not because I could see them, but because of how the ground responded. Subtle rises and falls, as if something long and interconnected was shifting under the surface. The trees ahead of us stopped trembling. The ones behind us intensified. The pattern reversed. Okay, Daniel said. We're not staying here. We moved again. Faster this time. The forest responded. The trees to our left began to tremble in a rapid, stuttering rhythm. To our right, a slower, heavier motion. The patterns shifted as we moved, adjusting in real time. Following. Anticipating. I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on the ground, on the path ahead, on anything that felt stable. But nothing was stable. Even the sounds of our movement began to distort. At one point, I heard Mara's footsteps ahead of her. Not behind. Ahead. As if the sound had arrived before the action. Stop, I said. We halted. The delayed sounds continued for a moment. Then faded. Daniel looked at me. You heard that too. I nodded. The forest floor pulsed again. Closer. The pressure beneath our feet became more pronounced, rising and falling in slow, deliberate waves. Something's under us, Mara said. The words hung in the air. No one disagreed. The trees around us began to shift. Not just tremble, shift. Their positions adjusted slightly, trunks leaning in new directions, closing gaps that had been open seconds before. The geometry of the forest changed. Paths narrowed, open spaces vanished. The sense of direction dissolved completely. I turned in a slow circle. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt familiar. We're not getting out, Daniel said quietly. Don't say that, Mara snapped. But her voice lacked conviction. The ground pulsed again, stronger. A ripple moved through the soil, visible now, a slight rise traveling outward from a point we couldn't see. The trees reacted instantly. A synchronized shudder, sharper and more intense than before. The sound that followed was different. Not a breath, not a rustle, something deeper, like wood grinding against itself. The vibration traveled up through the trunks, into the branches, though the leaves still didn't move. Only the wood, only the structure. It's in the roots, I said. The realization came fully formed. Whatever was beneath us, it wasn't separate from the forest. It was part of it. Or the forest was part of it. The patterns of trembling shifted again. This time, they aligned. All around us, a ring of trees vibrating in perfect synchronization. Encircling us. Mara stepped closer. There, closing in. The circle tightened. Not by much. Just enough to notice. The ground inside the ring felt different. Softer. More responsive. As if it were less solid. I swallowed. Back up, Daniel said. We stepped toward the edge of the circle. The trees there intensified their trembling. The ground beneath us dipped slightly. We stopped. The movement ceased. For a moment, everything held. Then, a sound came from below. Faint. Distant. A low, resonant vibration that felt more than it was heard. It pulsed once. The trees responded. Again. And again. Each pulse matched by a synchronized shudder in the surrounding trunks. A rhythm. Steady. Deliberate. The same pattern repeated. Over and over. Mara's voice was barely above a whisper. It's like a heartbeat. The word hung in the silence. Heartbeat. The ground pulsed again. Stronger. The soil shifted beneath our feet, subtle but undeniable. I looked down. The surface wasn't breaking, but it was moving. Breathing. The trees leaned inward. Not fully. Just enough to suggest intent. As if they were focusing on us. The rhythm continued. Pulse. Tremble. Pulse. Tremble. And with each repetition, the circle tightened. Not by moving closer. By adjusting space itself. The distance between us and the trees seemed to compress, the geometry folding inward. I felt it then. Not just being watched. Being studied. Measured. Every movement we made. Every shift in posture. Every breath. Reflected in the pattern of the forest's response. It's learning us, I said. Daniel looked at me. What do you mean? The ground pulsed again. The trees shuddered. I raised my hand slightly. The trees nearest to me responded first. A fraction of a second faster than the others. I lowered it. The pattern adjusted. Mirrored. Not perfectly. But close enough. It's not reacting randomly, I said. It's matching us. Mara shook her head. No, she said. No, it's not matching. She stopped. The realization hit her the same moment it hit me. It's anticipating, she finished. The pulse came again. The trees moved before I did. A synchronized tremor that preceded my next breath. I froze. The pattern continued, uninterrupted, as if my stillness had already been accounted for. Daniel took a step. The ground shifted ahead of him. Before his foot landed, he stopped mid-motion. It knew, he said. The silence deepened. The forest held us there, within its shifting geometry, its controlled rhythms. The trembling slowed, became more subtle, more refined, less like testing, more like confirmation. The pulse beneath us steadied. The heartbeat, if that's what it was, became consistent. Predictable. Aligned. With us. I looked around. The trees no longer seemed threatening. Not in the way they had before. They were still. Attentive. Focused. Waiting. For something. For us, Mara said quietly. I didn't ask how she knew. Because I knew it too. We hadn't disturbed the forest. We hadn't wandered into something unexpected. We had been expected. The silence wasn't suppression. It was preparation. The trembling wasn't reaction. It was recognition. The pulse beneath us continued. Steady. Patient. And for the first time since we'd entered the woods, I understood. We weren't trying to leave anymore. We were being placed. And whatever lived beneath the roots, whatever moved through the trees, had been waiting long enough to learn exactly when we would arrive.